are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone and welcome to the webcast. My name is Christine Dursey. I'm the Executive Director of APA Ohio and Vice Chair of the New Urbanism Division, and I will be the moderator for today's webcast. Today is Friday, October 31st, and we will hear the presentation, Stories from the Far North, Alaska Local Governments Build Climate Adaptation and Resiliency. For technical help during today's webcast, type your questions in the chat box found in the webcast toolbar to the right of your screen, or you can call the 1-800 number shown. For content questions related to the presentation, type those in the questions box also located in the webinar toolbar to the right of your screen, and we will answer those at the end of the presentation during the Q&A. On your screen is a list of the sponsoring chapters and divisions. We'd like to thank all of the participating sponsors for making these webcasts possible and free. Today's webcast is sponsored by the Alaska chapter. To learn more about all the chapters, visit planning.org/chapters. And to learn about our divisions, visit planning.org/divisions. On your screen is a list of upcoming webcasts for November. To register for these webcasts, visit utah-apa.org/webcasts. And to log your CM credits for attending today's webcast, visit planning.org/CM. Go to your dashboard, select Activities by Provider, which is the Alaska chapter, and then select today's event. This webcast has been approved for 1.5 CM credits for live viewing only. Some recorded webcasts are available for distance education CM credit. For availability of these, check the webcast webpage, again at utah-apa.org/webcasts. Like us on Facebook, Planning Webcast Series, to receive up-to-date information on our upcoming sessions and programming. And we are recording today's webcast. It will be available on our YouTube channel. Just search Planning Webcast on YouTube. And a PDF of the PowerPoint can be made available by emailing planningwebcast@yahoo.com. I'd now like to introduce today's speakers. Our first speaker today is John Duffy. Mr. Duffy has over 25 years' experience at the local government level, serving in various senior management positions, including Director of Planning and Borough Manager. John's experience includes program and service evaluation, code enforcement, capital improvement programming, as well as leading organization-wide performance metrics and high-performance organizational measures. In addition, Mr. Duffy has served as a planning commissioner and has served on EPA's Local Government Advisory Committee, where he chaired the indicators and military work groups. These work groups address some of the diverse challenges faced by communities throughout the nation, such as formerly used defense sites and funding water projects. John recently used his past experience and knowledge to provide technical assistance to a Namibian local government. John is presently a PhD candidate with the University of Alaska at Fairbanks. His doctoral research focuses on local government efforts in the realms of sustainability, climate change adaptation, and innovation. Lastly, John is a long-standing AICP and active member of the International City-County Managers Association. Our second speaker is Beth McKibben. Beth is currently a senior planner with the City and Borough of Juneau. She works on a variety of issues from conditional uses and variances applications and long-range planning, as well as working with boards and commissions such as the Juneau Commission on Sustainability and the Affordable Housing Commission. Before moving to Juneau, Beth worked as the city planner for the City of Homer, where she worked with the Planning Commission to develop the large retail standards and the design guidelines. She also helped to create the town center plan. When she isn't planning, Beth enjoys being outside, whether it's reading a book, walking with the dogs, hiking, cross-country skiing, or any of the other fabulous outdoor opportunities Juneau has to offer. Yes, even when it's raining. So with that, I am going to change the presentation over to Mr. John Duffy, who will get us started. John, did you receive my screen?
Are we good?
Yes, sir.
Let me see if I can put that away. There we go. Okay, well, thank you for the introduction, Christine, and happy Halloween, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to attend the webinar. I appreciate you have a lot of competing uses for your limited time. Lifelong learning is crucial in today's rapidly changing world, so my compliments to you for investing the time to seek out new information. My portion of today's talk will provide an overview of disaster resilience and adaptation from the Alaska local government perspective. I have lots of info, and I intend to move fast. If you would like to have some additional information or follow through, just send me an email, which is listed on this screen right here. Oops. So my presentation will proceed as follows. I'll begin by touching on our responsibilities as planners and some of the local government responsibilities. I'll provide a short overview of some of the common challenges faced here in Alaska, both related to disaster resilience and climate change. Touch on some liability issues that we face at the local government level. And then conclude by talking about common barriers we face when seeking to build disaster resilience and provide some ideas for enhancing disaster resilience. So, our collective responsibilities. Enhancing disaster resilience is part of our daily work as we accomplish these responsibilities in part by improving the resilience of our communities to disasters. It's important to reflect from time to time that we are engaged in very important work. Our decisions affect people's daily lives and also may last for generations. In the day-to-day struggle to get our tasks done, completed on time and under budget, we often forget about these facts, but we shouldn't. We're engaged in very important work. So let's talk a little bit about disasters and their various characteristics. Disasters can be a short-term event with a duration of a few seconds, like the trembler we had just a couple hours ago, or it can last for hours, like in a typhoon or hurricane. They can be a result of a simple calculation error that creates a weak design, or be the result of a complex set of conditions that creates a criminal or terrorist type event. They also can be hidden from view. I was reading in a science journal the other day that according to NASA, a solar superstorm just missed Earth last year. These Keratin-sized storms have the ability to severely damage our global electrical and communication systems. For instance, in 1989, a small solar storm knocked out the power grid serving Quebec, leaving 6 million people in darkness. And so I got very interested in this stuff, so I started looking around, and lo and behold, I found a recent National Academy of Sciences report that estimates that a Keratin-sized storm could as well as those unknown events like so. So generally, there are three kinds of disasters. You have the natural caused disasters related to extreme weather. Over here in the top left hand is the one of the fires on the Kenai Peninsula up here in Alaska. Is a failure of, the infamous O-ring in the shuttle disaster, or a component failure, or ill-conceived standard. This bottom picture here is actually Sioux Valley High School up here in the Matanuska-Susitna Borough, and it was caused by a battery that was recharging overnight. Ignited the high school on fire, and we almost had a very large wildfire resulting from it. So technology is the second. It was ignited because people thought that it would burn out in a week or two, and it's been burning for well over 30 years. And if you look closely, you'll see two people here, and that gives you an idea of how large this this hole is. In the center here is the event. This is a human error caused event. Someone failed to order fuel up there in Nome 2 years ago, which required an ice-strengthened tanker, Russian origin, to show up to deliver the fuel with Coast Guard icebreakers. One result of any of these types of disaster is there is an intense amount of human similar to what is seen throughout our nation. We have wildfires that cover hundreds of thousands of acres of land and create air alerts hundreds of miles away. Typically this occurs in our summer high tourism season, so it can be have a large negative effect on our economy. This center top picture here, which I came across when building this presentation, all these dots are earthquakes that occurred in the last 10 days. Fortunately, they're all magnitude of 2 or lower. The center bottom picture is a storm surge down in Juneau, Beth's hometown. And over here on the left is something a little bit different you may not see down in the lower 48. Our rivers flood, just like yours, but since they are predominantly glacier fed, they carry a lot of silt and gravel, which causes the stream bed to move from side to side over the years. So as you can see from this picture here, the water is over here on the right-hand side of the stream bed. Well, what will happen over time is we'll keep on dropping the gravel load, build up the base, or the floodplain, and the river will actually move over. So what happens is people, now that the river's over here, folks will build their homes on this side, the left-hand side of the stream bank or river bank, and say, wow, this is fantastic, I got a beautiful view. And with the Matanuska River, it takes about 20 years to show up. So in 20 years, they will be facing major erosion problems. And unfortunately, while I was borough manager as well as planning, as a peer. We've experienced temperature changes that are about double those occurring in the lower 48 or continental U.S. One of the results of the higher temperatures is that Alaska lakes and ponds are shrinking, the permafrost is thawing and melting, which is causing our roads to collapse or become wicked roller coaster rides. And more troubling, though, is the potential release of methane, a greenhouse gas that is much stronger heat-trapping gas than CO2. And this potential methane release, or actually it's already occurring, could greatly amplify global warming. The disasters associated with climate change are both short-term and near-term. We are experiencing up here more extreme weather events. This top slide here is the 2011 Barents Sea storm. And you can see in red the outline of Alaska. And if you can imagine moving the storm over onto the sides, over onto the land base of Alaska, you'll get an idea of how large it is. And here's a picture of a village out in the western part with the wind bearing down during the winter. It's also causing ecological change. We're having more warmer days, which are providing the longer lives for the spruce bark. The other challenge that we're facing is ocean acidification, which is potentially going to harm our fish resources. It's very important both to Alaska and the national economies, as Alaska leads the nation in terms of both volume and value of fish landings. And you can see this is over here in the bottom right-hand side, our crab catch projections are projected to drop considerably over time due to ocean acidification. The loss of Arctic sea ice has caused several problems as well, one being the effect on wildlife. I'm sure we've heard a lot about the problems of sea ice loss in terms of the polar bears. It's also a problem for all other Arctic animal life. Walrus use ice flows to disperse and raise young, and without ice flows, they are now concentrating in areas such as here in Point. The loss of Arctic ice has been linked to changes in the jet stream, causing unseasonably cold weather down your way. And it's also causing problems for about 176 Alaskan communities. The loss of sea ice means that the protection barrier around many of the villages and islands is gone, which allows the winter storms to create major erosion problems, as seen here in the bottom right-hand slide. So what I want to do is round out the discussion of these depressing little topics with a short overview of some liability issues that local governments face that are related to failing to properly prepare for disasters. Litigation is now being successfully pursued against local governments that fail to take action to reduce harm. We've seen forensic hydrologists, forensic hydraulic engineers, as well as other professionals take a look at what local governments have done, such as building a road or building a bridge without proper clearance, and then taking, if an event occurs that damages some property, they take a look at that and see if the structure put in by the local government has actually caused the problem. Here are some of the cases where local governments have actually been held liable. And as I mentioned, the road system, the bridge being built without adequate opening, graded land and increased runoff, and what have you. These legal actions are provide yet another justification for pursuing disaster resilience and making better use of our comprehensive plans, our hazard mitigation plans, and zoning ordinances to limit hazardous conditions. And as we know, the courts have generally accorded deference to us because we are protecting the public health, safety, and welfare. So now let's begin our climb out of these depressing topics by looking at some actions we can take to ward off these problems and improve disaster resilience. Let's begin with the definition. I wish that you note that this definition uses a different aspect of resilience. It is not the engineering definition, but the social ecological system definition, which is different by the inclusion of the ability for a community to reorganize to face new and emerging threats. An important aspect is the ability to adjust our rules to meet changing conditions. Example for us planners is engaging our communities to adjust our primary planning documents, the comp plan, the zoning ordinances, to meet the new challenges of extreme weather events and higher temperatures. Generally speaking, there's 4 primary components of disaster resilience. Social resilience. Does the community have a history of working together? Is there a lot of polarization? Is there a sense of community? Do citizens participate in community activities? Do they attend public meetings? Are there a large number of NGOs working on different aspects of community efforts? Another component is economic resilience. Can the local economy absorb shocks, economic shocks? Is it diverse? How does it rate in terms of creative class composition? Institutional resilience. Are the local governments and institutions experienced with handling disasters? Have they moved forward with mitigation efforts? Is there good planning going on? And are they engaged in long-term issues, or are they consumed by the day-to-day ankle biters? Infrastructure resilience. Does the community have the physical resources to address disasters and shocks? Are there sufficient available shelters to place people in the event of a flood and you have to move them out of their homes? What type of housing stock is available? Are there sufficient health care facilities to take care of people who may be injured? What I'd like to do now is talk about ways of improving disaster resilience and adaptive capacity. And I think one way to understand how you might be able to improve is to understand some of the barriers to accomplishing that. If we know some of these barriers up front, we can design our approach and actions and perhaps surmount these barriers. Here are some common barriers that have been found by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Plans are complex, as we know. Hence, we have to be, hence the topics are difficult to communicate, and we need to find ways of doing that, a better job of doing that. Sometimes it's difficult to adopt the plans, moving from the general concept of protecting property to the actual implementation effort of zoning a non-development zone. And then we have a barrier of overlapping federal and state policy and regulations, also known as turf issues. Another barrier is that there's competing planning issues out there. There's only so much we can do, but there's so many planning things that we need to address. We need to balance short-term political and fiscal costs with long-term benefits. Sometimes the short-term demands blur or outweigh these long-term considerations, making it necessary for us to describe and communicate the long-term benefits in a better way, and in such a way that garners support, such as long-term tax savings that result from fuel efficiencies, lower insurance rates, and less damage to buildings. We also need to recognize that our citizens also have a lot to deal with. So we must craft our approach in interesting ways that are also short duration. I think one of the most important things when we're talking about improving disaster resilience for the community is to start with yourself and family first. If you do not, you cannot concentrate on solving your community's problems, especially when you're responding to a disaster. You're wondering where your children are they safe? Is the wife or husband safe? How do I communicate with them? Are they at home or are they at school? Where are they? So put together a plan of action for the family in the event of an emergency and practice it a couple times a year. Make sure you have their specialty supplies around, the air and oil filters, which we learned when we had volcanic eruptions up here. Have medical kits or other special medical supplies available. And when you're buying, upgrading, or replacing, your home or what have you, make your decisions with or keep in mind when you're making these decisions that you need to be able to survive a disaster. Implement defensible space as well. And don't forget about becoming more financially literate and act accordingly. Local governments have a lot of powers that can help improve disaster resilience. Use them. Local governments that are primary land We also translate and implement state and federal initiatives. Here are some examples from City of Homer, Alaska, in how they use their governmental powers to improve sustainability and resilience. I want to thank Rick Abood, the planning director of Homer, for these ideas. The city has suffered from extreme weather events, coastal storms creating a lot of erosion problems. And the city formally embraced sustainability through council action. This is important because it provides a formal recognition and an overarching goal for the organization to achieve. They inform all new employees. They have an orientation, and here's their little packet of material that they hand out to all new employees. And I think this is crucial because the entire workforce learns about the goal of mitigation and sustainability. It's just not those planners up there in the on the second floor over there on the west end of the building. It's the entire organization. City-owned buildings are built to LEED standards. Here's a picture of their brand new library, which is actually beautiful. And they've moved much of the community from fuel, oil, and wood burning to natural gas for home heating. And they're also seeking out new technologies to produce electricity. And then I'll let you all read this on your own, but they also have been purchasing, since they own fleets of vehicles for police and fire and what have you, purchasing energy-efficient vehicles. Another way to improve disaster resilience is to learn from our experiences. Not many folks do this, but I think it's very important, and you can learn quite a bit about doing after-action reports and exercises. They identify what worked, what didn't, and why, and can point the way to taking appropriate actions. Make sure you're aware of the plans that are already in place. If you completed an analysis of 14 local governments. You can also improve disaster resilience by collaboration. Collaboration improves it by fostering innovation. Collaborate with those in your field and especially those outside of it. Collaboration, I can't say this enough, it's the key to innovation. Most innovations are not completely new ideas. Rather, they're existing ideas applied in a new way or setting. So someone, a health planner at the hospital might be pursuing some initiative in the healthcare field or in the community, and if you can take up that idea and apply it in a different setting, it's an innovation, and it also might help you accomplish a goal that you are seeking to achieve. And don't forget about traditional knowledge. There are elders out there who may have successfully dealt with similar threats before. Find out how they did it and how they went about implementing it. Another item to be aware of is the levee syndrome, where risky behavior is increased because of some external action. Typically, communities build levees, and then it protects a bunch of land, so people build right behind the levee, not realizing that the levee can be compromised, and overall the flood hazard is actually increased. Take special note of food security. It's a very real problem in most communities. We are especially concerned about food security criteria. Does it address extreme events like we've been experiencing? Are the culverts sized to handle the higher rainfall that we are now getting? Build resiliency into your infrastructure and your practices. Check out land division codes to ensure multiple access points to residential areas. When I was serving at the Matanuska Assistant Borough, we had a wildfire that completely cut off the community, because it only had one road in, and it was the same road used to get out. And had the fire cut it off, we would have been faced with moving everyone out of that community by helicopter. It was a terrifying few hours to live through. So check out your subdivision ordinances as well. Another way to improve disaster resilience is to consider the no adverse impact philosophy, how it might be used in your daily work. For most people, it's very easily understood, and it's supported in most cases because it's practical and doesn't threaten existing interests. Develop plans that enhance social and economic capacity. A study looking after the after effects of the most recent major flood on the Mississippi found that the communities that recovered first and strongest were those that had diverse economies. To have diverse economies, you also need to have good social and economic resilience. Improving disaster resilience is a continual effort. It requires dedication of time and effort. A stop-and-go approach just doesn't work. It requires long-term planning and effort. So it's critical that you set some time, that you schedule it, and actually do it. And once you do it, you will accomplish long-term goals, and it will pay big dividends to the community. In closing, enhancing disaster resilience saves lives and property and builds healthier, more livable communities. It's not a zero-sum game. Thank you so much, and we'll take questions at the end of the presentations. So now I'll move it over to Beth.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. So going from the disasters. Juneau is Alaska's capital city. Our population is 33,064, and we're only accessible by air or water. We're the only state capital that's not accessible by the road system. And we're off the grid in that it's very challenging because of our isolation to share resources with other communities. All our food, fuel, and other goods arrive via barge or plane. This is a photo looking at the airport down the channel towards downtown. And as you can see, we're constrained. We have mountains on one side and water on the other, so we're a very long linear community as well. A couple other things that are important to note is how expensive things are. A gallon of heating fuel was $4.10 a gallon in July, and we have no access to natural gas. So the majority of our heating currently is from fuel oil, and gasoline for our vehicles is quite high. Our electric is provided by a privately owned electric company, and 98% of our power of our electricity is hydro-generated. So Juneau's been very proactive in taking on climate change. In 2007, a panel convened to advise the city and borough on the impacts of climate change to our community. And following that action, city and borough of Juneau joined ICLEI, and as part of their ICLEI membership, established the Juneau Commission on Sustainability with a sunset of 3 years. We also completed the Climate Action Plan. The first greenhouse gas emissions inventory. In 2008, the comprehensive plan update included chapters on sustainability and energy, and our 2013 update continues those two chapters. They include goals and policies that relate to sustainability and energy. For example, one of the goals from the sustainability chapter is that CBJ is to build a sustainable community that endures over generations and is sufficiently far-seeing and flexible to maintain the vital and robust nature of its economic, social, and environmental support systems. And one of the examples of a goal from our energy chapter is to analyze the CBJ energy system, potential renewable energy resources, and emerging technologies, establish a long-term energy plan, and implement that plan for the affordable and sustainable use of energy in the CBJ. In 2008, a CBJ Sustainability Operations Committee, which we call the Green Team, was also formed. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we completed the first greenhouse gas emissions inventory in 2009. In 2010, the Assembly removed the sunset date from the Commission on Sustainability, and now they are a long-term standing committee. We adopted a climate action plan in 2011, and we also completed the second greenhouse gas emissions inventory. The JCOS was the steering committee for the climate action plan and held a number of community meetings and provided guidance to the consultants in the adoption of the plan. And they provided recommendations for the overall development and specific actions to lower energy use and greenhouse gas emissions. In 2008, April, Juneau experienced a massive avalanche that cut off hydropower electricity to Juneau. This is a slide of the electric tower after it was hit by the avalanche. After that avalanche, the electric rates increased from 11 cents per kilowatt hour to 53 cents per kilowatt hour. But following that, 3 weeks following that, Juneau's electric energy use dropped 24%. the community went to extreme measures to conserve electricity. Newspaper articles tell tales of no clothespins to be found anywhere in Juneau because people were hanging out their laundry instead of using their electric clothes dryers. And electronic displays in stores were limited to one TV, whereas all the rest of the displays were turned off. Our electric use has gone back up since the avalanche in 2008. We are still below historical levels of our land. We require engineered plans in these areas to restrict development, and in some places development is additional residential units beyond one single-family home may be restricted. The maps are weak in that, not this one, but when we look at the finer ones, when you come in for a permit, they follow property lines, and landslides and avalanches don't have a good habit of respecting property lines. The All Hazards Mitigation Plan includes information to assist city agencies and residents with planning to avoid future disaster losses. The plan provides information on hazards that affect Juneau, descriptions of past disasters, and lists activities that may help CBJ prevent disaster losses. The plan was developed to help CBJ make decisions regarding natural hazards that affect Juneau. On in my presentation that shows some of that flooding. Because we have had record rains this summer, combined with the warm temperatures, the glacier burst, and the lake that was behind the ice wall flooded into the river, combined with the high water, resulted in two 100-year flood events this summer. This is an electrical car charging station that's been installed at Eagle Beach State Park. The mission of the Commission on Sustainability is to promote economic, social, environmental, governmental well-being for Juneau and all its inhabitants. It's an 11-member commission comprised of 9 public members appointed by the Assembly, as well as 1 member of the Assembly and 1 member of the Planning Commission. There's one thing about the Juneau Commission on Sustainability that makes it unique among all the other city boards and commissions, in that our Assembly and Planning Commission members are voting members and do count towards a quorum, which makes it a very a powerful advisory committee. They receive support from CBJ staff liaison, which at this time and has been for the last 6 years is me. Commission membership reflects environmental, social, economic, and governmental perspectives unified by the common interest of sustainability. The Commission on Sustainability has been very active since they've been formed. Some of the actions are highlighted here. They've created a Sustainable Juneau Facebook page, and we'd love to have you come and like us. They've worked with various community organizations to further food security, and that was something that John mentioned in his presentation. In Alaska, almost all of our food comes from outside of our communities. And so the idea of food security in the event of a natural disaster, or if some reason barges are, perhaps a military disaster, and barges are no longer able to bring us food, our capacity is very limited. They have advocated and received funding for an energy plan, and that RFP will soon be released. This photo is a photo of the lake at the end, the Mendenhall Lake at Mendenhall Glacier after one of the yokel-offs this summer. So not being familiar with the area, you probably don't realize that it's flooded, but the water is very high in this photo. A couple of the other things that the Commission on Sustainability has accomplished. They helped establish the Juneau's Farmers Market, which is now operating independently. And throughout the summer months, they meet once a week, once downtown, alternating between a downtown location and a valley location. Post the 2008 avalanche, they organized and held community-wide events to teach citizens how to reduce energy consumption quickly. And with our 24% reduction in use, it was very effective. Again, as I had mentioned earlier, they were the steering committee for the Juneau Climate Action Plan. And in addition to our Facebook page, we have a Sustainable Juneau web page, and that web address is here on this slide. We'd love to have you come look at it. So Juneau adopted the Climate Action Plan in 2011. It's one of the recommendations in the Sustainability Chapter of the Comprehensive Plan. The purpose of the Climate Action Plan is to guide the community in addressing and reducing climate impacts. It includes a goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 25% by the year 2032. It also includes 10 top actions and a manual for future greenhouse gas emissions inventories. It was adopted by Assembly resolution, and the city staff as well as the Commission on Sustainability work together to continue to implement the goals and actions of the Climate Action Plan. There was a lot of public involvement in the development of the plan, which included a survey, an online survey, 2 focus group sessions. One focus group was on energy efficiency of buildings, and the second was on heating systems. And the JCOS hosted a public meeting to review the goals and action sections of the draft plan, and at a second public meeting reviewed the greenhouse gas inventory and action plan, focusing on the top actions. It's a major commitment towards sustainability for Juneau and provides a roadmap for reducing costs and greenhouse gas emissions while enhancing the local community economy. Articles with prizes for proof that you've read the article or enacted some of the recommendations in the article in our monthly Health Yourself newsletter. So some of the challenges that we've had in Juneau in implementing many of our sustainability goals, our energy efficiency goals, and the goals of the Climate Action Plan is educating policymakers and city employees about all of our various goals and policies. We also suffer or find a challenge in creating that buy-in. Like everywhere else, we have better success when we propose these actions as ways to save money than we do as a way to have an impact or address climate change. We have significant budget constraints, so we've been trying to focus on what we call the low-hanging fruit and changing everyday activities rather than enacting things that cost a lot of money. As you've seen, we have challenges with weather, and our physical geographic isolation makes it very challenging to implement many of the goals and policies. One of the other challenges is that we don't have one staff person dedicated to sustainability and energy. As we experience here in Juneau are a little more focused in that while hydropower is very cost-effective once you're able to provide it, it's very expensive to build new hydropower capacity, especially here in our area where we have such geographic constraints. And most hydropower, well, not most, yeah, most of our hydropower sources are physically isolated, and so in order to build them, there are no roads to access them. So in order to bring in the equipment and infrastructure, that's all done with helicopters and airplanes, and which is very expensive and very challenging and sometimes dangerous. We also have two mines here, two active mines here in Juneau, Greens Creek Mine and Kensington Mine. Greens Creek Mine was recently stopped generating diesel electricity and went to hydropower a few years ago when our Lake Dorothy hydro plant went online. But we don't have enough electricity capacity to serve Kensington Mine at the moment. And if we were able to do that, their greenhouse gas emissions would significantly decrease. We also would like to be able to supply cruise ships with clean electricity while they're in port. We have a phenomenal number of cruise ships that come through here every summer, and but we don't have the capacity, the electric capacity, the hydroelectric capacity to provide them with clean power at this time, which leads us to our limited supply. And one of the other challenges of having a limited supply of hydropower is when you have people who are converting from, say, oil-based heat, oil-fired heat, to electric heat. The electricity to those customers unless we increase our supply. So I was really excited when I was making these slides for successes, because it's sometimes you feel like you're not being very successful because of the constraints. But Juneau's been very successful in implementing many things and dealing with resiliency and climate change. For example, all city projects now that are over $5 million have to be LEED certified. The city has adopted a no idling policy for city vehicles, and this is really important. In cold winter months, people tend to leave their vehicles idling rather than turn them off and then having to get in them and warm them up. New city projects undergo a life cycle cost analysis, so that part of the decision-making process isn't just the upfront initial cost, but includes the cost of operating it. So our decision makers can include that information in their decision-making process. We also undergo a greenhouse gas emissions evaluation for new city projects. And again, the biosolids study is another example where they took the various alternatives, and they've also included an analysis of expected greenhouse gas emissions for the various alternatives. So that the one that I showed you in a slide at the Eagle Crest ski resort at the top of the hill. And we have over 25 electric vehicles in Juneau. The slide I showed you earlier with the parade, we only had 3 vehicles 3 years ago to participate in the parade. And the Eagle Crest ski area was converted from diesel to hydroelectric power a couple of years ago, which is another savings in greenhouse gas emissions. Another thing that I haven't mentioned, we have a Willoughby District Plan, which is a sub-area plan for the Willoughby District, which is near downtown here in Juneau, and it supports district heating. And it's been very exciting. In the last year, we've had presentations from people in Montpelier, Vermont, about their district heating, as well as from an engineer, Andy Baker, who's in Anchorage, who engineered the seawater heating system for the Seward Sea Life Center. And so we're very hopeful that we may be able to put in district heating beginning in the Willoughby district that might grow into the downtown area and out into some of our more historic neighborhoods that we call the Flats and over by the Juneau Douglas High School, whether it be powered by a biofuel like wood pellets or seawater heating district. Those are things we need to explore, but it's exciting that we're having those conversations. We've also, as you can see in the slide, we've installed ground source heating pumps at the Juneau International Airport and the Diamond Park Aquatic Center and the AEL&P office building. AEL&P is our privately owned electric building. Glacier Valley and Harborview Elementary Schools have been recently renovated, and both of those received a LEED certification. The Sea Alaska building, Sea Alaska is the regional native corporation, recently switched over their heating and was retrofitted with wood mass biosolids. This is a slide showing their hopper being filled with pellets. And then National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration Ocbay Lab has a seawater source heat pump. This is an interesting slide. It shows the results of our greenhouse gas emissions inventory. Their studies were published in 2009 and 2011, but they show results from 2007 and 2010. And it's a great slide of a success in that you can see both our energy use and our greenhouse gas emissions went down in those 3 years. And then what's next? We would like to complete the energy plan. As I had mentioned, we're getting ready to release an RFP. It's a recommendation both in the comprehensive plan as well as the climate action plan. We want to, the commission resistance to that from our building community. We will continue to advocate for advocate and educate to the public, the policymakers, and CBJ employees about the Juneau Climate Action Plan in hopes that we can continue to implement the goals and policies. And we would like to, hopefully, and when we're no longer in a budget crisis, be able to fund a full or part-time position to be an energy manager or sustainability coordinator for our community. And that is everything I have to say, and we'll be happy to take questions.
Great, thank you. Yeah, everyone, please feel free to type in your questions in that chat box. Let's see, this first question is for John. How does FEMA update your firm maps? I would imagine with the river channel variances, updated floodplain info would be very critical to your planning efforts.
Yes, it is. And we struggle with the FEMA map updates like everybody else in the United States. So the our real problem, we on many of the rivers, we have the flood zones. We do not have all of the mapping for all of the rivers, which is a problem, and it's really a budgetary problem. Nor do we have base flood elevations throughout the populated areas, and that's once again a budgetary issue, both with FEMA as well as the local government. So while we have many of the areas on the principal rivers like the Matanuska mapped, it's not the entire borough. Our major problem is really not flooding, it's erosion. And as you know, the flood hazard program doesn't touch that.
Thank you. Next question. Does the Alaska state government have legislation on climate change? And if there's one, what does it entail? Coordination with local communities or more of a statewide effort?
I'll attempt this one. I've looked at state statutes, and there are no state statutes related to climate change or sustainability. I participated on a climate action task force several years ago. It's been disbanded, and even though we have a lot of climate change challenges, particularly up in the north, where the lack of sea ice is causing great problems. The term climate change is very polarizing up here. So no state statutes or legislation.
Okay. I think this is for Beth. How was your GHG inventory conducted?
That's a really complicated question. Probably the best way to answer that is to direct the caller to our webpage to look at the at juneau.org, and on the manager's, if you pull up administration, there is a link there to the Juneau Climate Action Plan and the greenhouse gas emissions inventory. The specific process is one of the appendix in that plan.
Great. And could you talk a little bit about the specific climate adaptation actions? Has Juneau undertaken those, or have they focused solely on mitigation?
I think we have mostly focused on, well, we have a lot of mitigation. We have, of course, we have some disaster mitigation. The hazards plan, there are now, I'm going to call them snow breaks, but there's a different word around the big electric towers, the one that you saw that got tipped over by the avalanche. And then we've been focusing on reducing our energy usage to
Okay, my internet's going in and out. I think you finished the question, but is there anything specific about predicting changes in climate that you have worked with?
not that I can think of.
Okay. Would it be feasible for residents to grow some food in their yards to mitigate food insecurity? If so, has that become something that folks have done?
I'll answer that question. Part of it, I think if we're going to answer it from a Juneau-specific question, yes, people do that. If we want to answer it from a statewide question, again, the answer is yes. But our growing conditions vary. So here in Juneau, we're very limited on what we can grow. We can grow cold crops really well. We grow really good potatoes and zucchinis and lettuce and root vegetables, but we can't do things. It's really challenging to grow things like tomatoes or corn or some of the a lot of fruits we can't grow here. Now, if you move up towards John's area in the Mat-Su Valley, some people are probably aware of the giant vegetables that they grow in the Mat-Su Valley. But again, they're still limited. They can't grow the wide variety of foods that people can grow in the lower 48. And then even farther north, it's even more challenging. In addition to, most of the state doesn't have really good soil for growing because Alaska is so geologically new. Do you have anything to add, John?
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that is that there's also a lack of food storage facilities. So what happens is, even with the limited amount of food products that we can grow, which Beth identified, basically root crops, they hit the market all in the fall. And then after 6 weeks, they are gone. So no more potatoes or carrots because we just do not have the facilities to store them. So even for our schools, all of the vegetables are imported, mostly from the Pacific Northwest. So it's a major challenge.
This is for either of you, have either of you worked with any of the Inuit communities in terms of disaster preparedness or helping them in terms of resources if anything should happen to the area?
I haven't. Perhaps Beth has.
I have not either. I do know that they've worked, that the community of Nome, which may or may not include their indigenous population, has done some disaster planning with another planner here in Alaska.
Okay, great.
Yeah, let me circle.
go
Christine, if I could add on to that and also attempt to circle back to that question about statewide legislation. In Alaska, it is the local governments, and there's only a few of them, that have taken the initiative to address climate change and sustainability. The city and borough of Juneau is the shining example for us up here, and they've done a great job, and Beth has been very important in making that happen. And there's only a few other places. The city of Homer is another good example, and then, as Beth mentioned, up in Nome, which is the Northwest Arctic Borough, they have also tended to move forward, and I suspect have been working with the Alaska Native community to help with that, with their special challenges, as well as the North Slope Borough, because it's Northwest Arctic Borough and the North Slope Borough that have to deal with the I think there's like 176 communities that are being challenged with the lack of sea ice and the coastal erosion that is happening.
Great, thank you. And also, someone would like clarified the difference between a city and a borough in terms of how Alaska defines that. Do either of you have?
And when you see city and borough, that means the two local governments have combined.
Great, thank you. Next question. Is there a problem with fuel storage? So we talked about, this I think goes back to, John, your comment about food storage issues. Is there a fuel storage issue?
Yeah.
I'll talk a little bit, and then I'll pass it over to Beth. We have something called the Denali Commission up here, which every congressional season they're trying to get rid of it. But what happened is the Denali Commission over the years provided a lot of funds
Right, but in the, for the regular course of business, I think the communities have done a good job of planning for that, and it's not an issue.
Okay, it looks like this might be our last question for the day. Is it possible that the reduction in greenhouse gases between 2007 and 2010 was also contributable primarily to the severe economic downturn during that period, or was the Great Recession factored into the analysis?
The recession was not factored into the analysis as far as I can recall. I think the analysis was basically focused on actual usage. I think it has more to do with conservation efforts, the Lake Dorothy hydropower coming online and becoming serviceable, so more of our electricity was being provided by clean hydropower. I think those are the three major factors.
Right, and just to add on to that is our economy tends to go in a different cycle than the continental U.S. And in particular, with the 2008 financial crisis, we had gone through something like that in the mid-'80s where we had a housing bubble. So we learned our lesson then. It was a very, very we had learned our lesson. So our economy was much stronger, I should say.
Great. Thank you. Well, it looks like this is it for our questions. So with that, on your screen is the contact information for John Duffy and Beth McKibben. Thanks to the both of you for joining us this morning, I guess, for you. This afternoon, maybe for more of us, and we appreciate your comments, and thank you for joining us, and thanks to everybody else for joining us this afternoon, and have a happy and safe Halloween weekend. Thank to the both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.